Shalom, Patreon. Sorry, go ahead. You say words now.
Shalom, Patreon.
Shalom, Patreon.
We should switch.
Shalom, Patreon.
Hi, good to see you.
Knife Hands asked, I have wild rabbits around my home and would like to know how to trap them and raise them up and what to feed them to plump them up. Well, let's talk about rabbits. For one thing, they don't make any noise, unlike that rooster.
Yeah.
Capturing wild rabbits, I'm gonna go ahead and say no. Now, I've eaten probably hundreds, I'd say it's hundreds of wild rabbits and dozens of meat rabbits, domesticated meat rabbits. The meat rabbits are gonna do much better for you as far as producing meat. They're also tame. They come from stock that the only thing it's known for generation upon generation is captivity. They're pretty docile. You can pick them up and they don't try to attack you unless you have a female with kits, which is the name for baby rabbits. They get kind of aggressive when they got babies, but I would not, let's do a cost benefit analysis here. The amount of energy and angst you're going to put into trying to catch wild rabbits and the traps and equipment, live traps that you're going to have to produce or acquire to trap these things so that they'll put on meat versus spending a couple $100 and buying one good male and 2 to 3 good females. You're dead to me, rooster. We spent $200 on our rabbits. What do we get? Go ahead, tell the people.
We got a buck and, was it 3 does?
3 does.
Yeah. And
Do you remember their breeds?
they were all giants. I don't remember what.
The buck and 1 female, 1 doe were Californian.
Right.
And then the 2 other females were Norwegian giants.
Right. And that's the thing too, like a wild rabbit, you're gonna get like maybe 2 pounds
Of meat off of it? Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, even with it nice and plump. So with our meat rabbits, we got
We were butchering at about 11 weeks and getting 3.5 pound carcasses. And then
Right.
if you let them go beyond that, you let them go to maturity, our does weighed, I think, 15 pounds, something like that. I mean, you're talking snowshoe hair size rabbits.
Yeah.
The cages were 30 by 30, 30 inches square by 30 inches square. And the doe could lay down, the Norwegians could lay down with their feet touching one end of the cage and their head pressed against the other end. Huge rabbits. And now, I know we got the vegan in the room. All they know is domestication. They're not wild rabbits. In fact, a couple of times they had a jailbreak and they're the dumbest animals on earth. And that's the difference between these things that have been raised in captivity in perpetuity for the last 100 generations versus wild rabbits is,
Well, and you have the health issues too. Like wild rabbits, you don't eat those suckers in the summer.
Yeah, around here they get worms in their liver and it's...
Yeah, they're riddled with worms and
you don't know what they're eating either. They could be
Right.
eating, lots of people, at least in North Texas, have put out, poison for their rabbits because they don't want the rabbits eating their garden or whatever. And so you don't know what those animals have been eating. So I would get meat rabbits rather than trying to capture wild rabbits for the trouble that you're going to put into trying to capture them. You're definitely better off just starting from scratch with actual meat rabbits.
And then as far as feed, I mean, you can tractor your rabbits so that they're munching grass. They have pelletized food,
Kitchen scraps.
kitchen scraps.
Garden scraps.
garden scraps. Post garden, you can let them in and just let them go to town, and they'll clean it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Tell the people about rabbits cleaning up gardens.
yeah.
Go ahead.
When they got out, they got into the garden.
We
and,
had,
like,
well, hold on.
wiped it.
We started with all of our rabbits in cages, and we thought, oh, that's inhumane. They shouldn't be in cages.
Right.
We'll build them a colony. So we made this like 10-foot square by 8-foot high, basically like a dog kennel for rabbits. And we lined the bottom of it with 2 layers of chicken wire because rabbits will dig. They'll also chew through 2 layers of chicken wire and then dig a tunnel out.
Yep.
And I was working in Austin, and I get a call from my wife, frantic, because the rabbits had gotten out and destroyed the garden.
Decimated it.
Wrecked our spring garden. Wrecked it. 11 raised beds, fruit trees, row crops, destroyed it. Now, we had just gotten the conviction to keep Torah. And I was on the fence about, the Levitical eating, Leviticus 11. Rabbits have paws. You don't eat that goes forth on paws. And if you think about that, again, this is another great reason not to keep wild rabbits, because what Leviticus 11 does is it removes the parasitical cul-de-sacs, the trash collectors, right? The waste paper baskets of the food chain from your diet. So you're not eating the things that collect all the crap out there in these, biological ecosystems. Well, tell the people what you did to these here rabbits.
It was rabbit jihad.
Rabbit jihad.
They all died.
You were so pissed.
Yeah, I was mad.
And I was on the road, and I was like, listen, when I get home, we'll deal with it. And you're like, there's nothing to deal with. It's all gone. There's no, and I'm in my brain, I'm like, I just saw the garden 2 days ago. Like, how could it be all gone? Big, beautiful plants in the,
All my greens were like this tall.
Yep, tomato
and
plants.
they were just
Yep.
this tall. They were chewed down to nothing. So, so that's something like if you're planning on getting rabbits,
Cages are better than colonies in our experience. We've done both.
yes, or if you do colonies, it needs to have a solid floor.
Yeah, that's true. Concrete pavers. Some people
Yes.
use concrete pavers, or tiles, or something out there that they can't dig through.
Because like the plus side of rabbits is, it is some great manure.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So, like, our manure was rabbits and chickens, and our garden was like phenomenal. And that's mainly all we planted in. Like,
Yep. Yeah, we
that
planted
with their
in compost.
shavings, we put in our compost pile whenever we mucked out their areas, and as that broke down, that's what we used to plant our next garden, and it was phenomenal.
So I got I know a guy in North Texas who runs sheep, and they have a riding school as well. And I got a dump truck load from him that was, I think it was supposed to be 8 yards, but he definitely loaded it heavy, and he told me he loaded it heavy, so I think it was much more like 10 yards of horse stall muckings, which is basically dirt and shavings and horse crap. Then he's like, yeah, and we screened it, and we put a whole bunch of sheep manure in there too. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I got that dumped in my driveway, and then I took it one wheelbarrow at a time, about 30,000 pounds of it, one wheelbarrow at a time, from the front yard to the backyard. And it was my goal for, I think it was 2 months. I was like, I just need to get 10 wheelbarrows today. And every day I'd get 10 wheelbarrows. It took a lot of wheelbarrows to move it, right? We got that in the backyard, and then that was the basis of our compost pile. And then, like my wife said, we'd add the muckings from the rabbit colony. And see, in the colony, we put our chickens in there as well. And then the chickens would hop down and scratch through the rabbit manure and incorporate that with the bedding.
Yeah.
And we mucked that out. So we had chickens and rabbits in the same enclosure, which you can do, and it don't bother each other, whether they're in a colony or in cages in the same enclosure. In fact, they work really well together. And the younger guy from Polyface, not Joel Salatin, Daniel Salatin from Polyface Polyface Farms, has several really good videos about doing combination chicken and rabbit houses. But we did that, turned that into, literally took that stuff and turned it into our compost pile and let it sit. And everywhere in North Texas, the soil is so garbagey
Yeah.
that,
Dense clay.
and it doesn't hold,
rock.
and it doesn't hold moisture. It would, in the summer, you get these huge crevasses in your backyard. I mean, a toddler could lose their leg down one. And that's what we had for soil until we started composting. And so I said all that to say, when you say that's what we were planting in, that's what we were planting in. And in raised beds with that. And then we'd till rows for row crops and then dress back into that row with that compost. And
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. So rabbits are a great addition to a garden system or permaculture composting systems, interconnected loops, because their manure is not hot and it's very nitrogen rich. So you can top dress your garden with it. And then as it rains, it creates like a compost tea that then feeds your plants. It's really good stuff, to the point where we've considered getting more rabbits keeping Torah, not for eating, but just for the manure,
Yeah.
because they're that easy. And I'll say this, the meat's delicious.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's really good. So, but stay away from wild rabbits.
Yeah. It's
Just-
it's like, do I want to go capture, a wild Uzbekistani yak and raise that for meat, or just get a beef cow? It's like the beef cow is purpose bred for making meat.
Right.
Which I'll also say this, within the first 12 weeks on a New Zealand giant, I think it's 12 weeks on New Zealand's, that's their production period. And during that period of time, from a little tiny furball to a 5-pound rabbit, 5 to 6 pound rabbit that you bop on the back of the head, slit its neck, butcher it, they're converting feed to meat at a ratio of 4 pounds to 1 pound. 4 pounds of feed to 1 pound of meat. Beef cattle are 1 to 7. So rabbits are almost twice as effective in putting on meat as beef cattle are. So definitely something to consider if you're trying to generate meat for a homestead. But again,
And whenever they have babies, I think like generally they'll have like 10 or 11, and they can sometimes even 12 kids. They can sustain, as in the mother taking care of the kids, generally 9 or 10. So you're gonna have some loss out of every litter.
that's a good point too. Yep.
But still, at 11 weeks old, you have 9 to 10
You're getting
5-pound rabbits
Yep.
to go in the freezer.
You're getting 30, 35 pounds of meat every time you butcher.
Yeah.
And so what we were trying to do, and what ultimately we'd just fallen into this habit of doing right before we had Bunny Jihad and started keeping Torah in earnest, was to have one female bred per month. The buck would service each female, one female per month, and then that got us on a rotation between, so we're butchering, because 3 does is 3 months, which is 12 weeks. You want to butcher at around between 10 and 12 weeks. 11 is good for us. And so we were butchering 1 litter per month, which is 30 to 35 pounds of meat per month, which is about a pound of rabbit per day. And so that's a significant amount of meat generation. And then, at some point you get tired of eating rabbit. It's like, what do you do with this? Barter and trade, man.
Yeah.
There's one of the best things about Squid and Mrs. Squid was, they have a big, robust garden. They love to bake, and she's a classically trained chef. So we were training rabbits for homemade bread and pizza crusts and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. Pickles,
Yeah.
because you got a pickle addiction. So, but it's absolutely a resource, and I'm saying all of that. We don't eat them anymore because we have a deep conviction that we're not supposed to, and not for the morality or the ethical issues around eating meat, but because Leviticus 11 tells us not to.
Yep.
So,
But if you're going to, stay away from wild rabbits. Invest in meat rabbits.
Yep.
And you will be much happier
or you
with
could
the
just
outcome.
eat this puppy.
Don't eat the puppy.
You could just eat this puppy. Oh yes, puppy love. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's a good answer.
Yep.
Do you want to hit the button?
Yes.
Okay, hit the button.
Shalom.
Shalom.